Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this morning when I went to check on TASS, the Russian news agency, I came across this article, and this is the main topic that I will be bringing to you today. However, I have two other ones. So this is the news, everyone, from today. Polish president vetoes bill on extending aid to Ukrainian refugees. I'm going to read you this very quick article, but then we go into details what this really is about. Karol Nawrocki explained that the legislation failed to include restrictions on child allowances, arguing that such benefits should only be paid to Ukrainians who are officially employed. And I will bring to you the words from Polish President Karol Nawrocki in a second. But before I do this, since we mentioned the assistance and help, I want to say this before I forget. And it's really huge thank you to Hannah, Janice, and I believe the last person is, if not originally from Poland, maybe has Polish last name, so I assume might be Polish person. Maria, thank you so much for your donations, and to the lady with name Maria, I will say in Polish, bardzo dziękuję Pani Mario za taką szczerą donation. Bardzo jest mi miło. Dziękuję serdecznie. So this was the donation on my PayPal account. Very grateful, guys, for your support. I deeply appreciate. So now let's jump straight to the news. So what's going on? Well, let me start with the program that we have in Poland. And I have this here on Google, but I will translate this. So just give me a moment. So what is 800 plus? We have something in Poland that is called 800 plus. And this is the name of the program that is for the family 800 plus. That is a support, financial support. 800 stands for 800 Polish zloty, which is about a little bit over $200, 250, I think, around that. For each child until the age of 18 years, regardless of the income of the family. So the Ukrainians right here, the Ukrainians, they were also eligible for that. And what was taking place, no surprise to anyone, that people take advantage of the system. I'm not saying just Ukrainians, but if you're a Pole, taking advantage, it's a little different, even though still it's not okay, right? But what was taking place is that we have Polish people who are working. They needed support for children. And then we had a lot of Ukrainian people, a lot are working, I'm not saying, but we had a lot of those Ukrainian refugees who were just taking advantage of the system and getting this money for the kids. And you know, when you have number of kids, and you still are renting out, for example, your property in Ukraine, of course, not all of them, absolutely not all of them, but a lot of them. That's another story. You know what I'm talking about. So now let's go to Karol Nawrocki. What did he really sign today? This was a big test, everyone, the veto that he signed today. Well, he vetoed, so he didn't sign the legislation, the act, but he's not for it. So this was a big test because a lot of people were waiting for his reaction, what he will do with this particular support for Ukrainians. So let me read the article from Polish portal, and then we go to Polish president, and he will say a lot of things also about Putin and the Russian Federation. But first, let's read this. One moment, right here. And the commercials are, of course, jumping in all the time. So let's read this. Karol Nawrocki's veto. It's about helping Ukrainians. Karol Nawrocki stated that he had vetoed the law on assistance for Ukrainian citizens. We are in a situation where the citizens of the Polish state in their own country are treated worse than our guests from Ukraine, said the president. Well, actually, I have to say that I'm glad he vetoed that, but let's continue. As the president said, he was convinced that all circles clearly declare that 800 plus should be due only to those Ukrainian citizens who undertake the obligation to work. However, this did not happen because the law that I received on my desk on helping Ukrainian citizens does not make the correction around which the public debate has been going on for a long time. So pretty much what he received a bunch of papers to sign. And there was again the continuation of the same story. So they, which, you know, Zelensky says, and that's mentality of majority of people from Ukraine. And I say it fully aware what I'm saying. He said that. So he received this paper and there was no correction. So they should still continue receiving this 800 plus for each child, regardless if the parents are working or not. And he says here, a Polish president, and I did not change my opinion and I intend to fulfill my commitment. And I believe that 800 plus should belong only to those Ukrainians who make the effort to work in Poland. I think the same about healthcare, he continued. If we look at healthcare and notice a certain preference for Ukrainians compared to Poles, and the fact that Ukrainians are entitled to healthcare regardless of whether they take up work and pay health contributions or not, we are in a situation where citizens of the Polish state in their own country are treated worse than our guests from Ukraine. He said, yes, he actually said it, and I'm going to play this for you in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not have my consent for this. As I said, first of all, Poland, first of all, Poles, he stressed. I believe that we should bring about a kind of social justice here. At least Poles in their country should be treated equally with our guests from Ukraine, he added. Right on point. So that's what's up, everyone. But then he said also other things, and that's why I will play this for you right now. And I'm just thinking if I should just read you the translation or I should play with the subtitles. So maybe let's play with the subtitles. This is the moment in which Karol Nawrocki will be talking about Putin, the Russian Federation, and how he is not signing this deal with 800 plus for Ukrainians. So let me mute myself. Let's take a listen. I might stop a few times and give my few cents.
Szanowni Państwo, 3,5 roku temu po ataku, okrutnym, barbarzyńskim ataku Federacji Rosyjskiej na Ukrainę wybuchła wojna, która wpłynęła nie tylko na losy i pewne geopolityczne zmiany w architekturze bezpieczeństwa i naszego regionu świata, Europy, ale generalnie na całą architekturę bezpieczeństwa na świecie. Ta wojna wybuchła w momencie, w którym Polacy, drodzy Państwo, po jej wybuchu po raz kolejny udowodnili, że jesteśmy narodem wielkiej solidarności, narodem otwartych serc, ponad podziałami politycznymi. Z jednej strony prezydent Polski, pan Andrzej Duda, z drugiej strony obywatele, obywatelki państwa polskiego, z drugiej strony prezydent Warszawy, Rafał Trzaskowski. Wielu polityków, niezależnie od emocji politycznych, gotowi byli, przede wszystkim obywateli, pomagać uchodźcom z Ukrainy. Polska była pierwszym państwem, które podnosiło także po ataku Federacji Rosyjskiej na Ukrainę właśnie tę kwestię w świecie dyplomatycznym. Przeszliśmy jako wspólnota narodowa wielki test solidarności i otwartości na naszych sąsiadów. proponując także rozwiązania prawne w zakresie polityki społecznej, ochrony zdrowia, które pozwoliły wielu uchodźcom z Ukrainy funkcjonować w dzisiejszym systemie społeczno-ekonomicznym. Były to wówczas rozwiązania doraźne, pokazujące, że jesteśmy gotowi do przyjęcia blisko 1 miliona uchodźców z Ukrainy. W ciągu tego
So I will be reading this for you from this moment on. He said that we took around 1 million refugees from Ukraine. I don't know what he's referring to because the number is definitely higher. Does he mean just the first year? Which I think was even more than that. But nevertheless, let me read you what he says, because now we are getting to the point. So he's talking about how much Poland has helped Ukraine. Absolutely. Let's continue. During this 3.5 years, as you well know, a lot has happened. We are still a nation open to helping and accepting refugees from Ukraine, as well as caring for them. And that won't change. This does not change, ladies and gentlemen. The strategic goal of the Polish state in the face of the Russian Federation's attack on Ukraine remains unchanged, both in the strategic and geopolitical sense, which is not just a declaration, but is also the result of my conversation with the presidents of other countries and the Prime Minister's conversations with his friends from the West. Poland's interest is military in terms of equipment, as we have proven, but also fundamental support for Ukraine in this conflict, because the threat to the modern world is Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation. So the threat to the modern world is Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation is the perpetrator. Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen, is a victim of this war. However, after 3.5 years, the situation also in terms of Polish public finances and political and social emotions, as you know, has fundamentally changed. The law that was proposed 3.5 years ago should be corrected today. I am convinced that I was convinced, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the entire election campaign, also following the signals from the Polish government from the beginning of 2025, that all major political circles in Poland, as well as my main opponent in the presidential race, Mr. Rafał Trzaskowski, that was, you know, the Soros guy, the woke Soros guy, that all circles clearly declare that the 800 plus benefit should only be granted to those citizens, those refugees from Ukraine, who undertake the obligation to work. It might seem for a long time that this is a kind of compromise between various political groups and many candidates. However, this did not happen, because the law that I received on my desk, ladies and gentlemen, on assistance to Ukrainian citizens, does not make this correction, around which the public debate has been going on for a long time. And I do not change my opinion, and I intend to fulfill my obligation, and I believe that the 800 plus benefit should only be granted to those Ukrainians who make the effort to work in Poland. So actually, I just want to say, I didn't mention, he's talking without any script. This is just, I mean, pretty good, no? It's a really, really, really nice. He's just, I'm not saying everything he's saying is nice, you know what I mean? But I'm saying that's nice that he is, and he speaks very well, very nice Polish. So had a lot of very good vocabulary, and he's very well spoken in Polish, quite elegant as far as using Polish language. So let's continue. Similarly, with healthcare, ladies and gentlemen, if we look at the healthcare and see a certain preference of Ukrainians towards Poles and healthcare, that Ukrainians are entitled to, regardless of whether they take up employment and whether they pay health insurance contributions. Of course they don't. Most of them, well, I don't know, a lot of them, or not. This was just my few cents. This puts us in a situation in which Polish citizens in their own country, in Poland, are treated worse than our guests from Ukraine. This, ladies and gentlemen, I do not have my consent either. As I said, Poland first, Poles first is not just an election slogan, but I recognize that we should achieve a kind of social justice here. At least Poles in their own country should be treated equally to our guests from Ukraine. And this is the most important thing for me. Okay, so this is what happened. He didn't sign this. He vetoed it. So as far as at this moment, I have to tell you, he signed. Let me actually show you this from official sign. He signed a lot of acts. One moment, everyone. Let's see. This is from official site. He's kind of like a Polish version of Trump in a way. He keeps on signing a lot of things. The president considered 22 acts, vetoed, and he actually vetoed the so-called Windmill Act. So the same like Trump. It's very similar as far as things he agrees on and he doesn't. So let me read this quickly for you. The President of the Republic of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, announced that he had considered 22 bills that came to him from the parliament, signed 21 laws, vetoed one, the so-called windmill law. At the same time, the president signed a proposal to freeze electricity prices. So today he vetoed another one. I think he vetoed like 3 different things, including the windmills. And today that support for Ukrainians, 800 plus. So now, since we mentioned the Ukraine, shall we go for a quick check to TASS again? Let's look at it. Let's look at it. Why not? What is this, everyone? Let's read this. Neo-Nazi activists warn Zelensky over deal to cede Donbas region. According to the newspaper, these views gained popularity with the younger generation of Ukrainian servicemen and civilians. What does it say? Moscow, August 25th, that is today. A nationalist Ukrainian activist has threatened to assassinate Vladimir Zelensky if he agrees to withdraw his troops from Kiev-controlled areas in the Donbas region. Quoting now someone who said it, if Zelensky were to give any unconquered land away, he would be a corpse. Means dead man, right? Politically, and then for real. The British newspaper quoted Sergei Sternenko, the leader of the Odessa regional branch of the Right Sector Organization, and that is a terrorist and extremist group outlawed in Russia, as saying. So I guess this is like who Zelensky hangs around with, right? Then they are turning on each other, no surprise. According to the Times, his views have gained popularity with the younger generation of Ukrainian servicemen and civilians. So this is like, what was the name of that group? SS Jungen? Was it SS Jungen, guys? Yeah, SS Jungen, right? So kind of like that, I guess. Earlier, Viktor Medvedchuk, leader of the other Ukrainian movement, stressed that peace efforts in Ukraine are obstructed not only by Zelensky, who no longer truly governs the country, but also by the system he created. According to him, the so-called political elites, including neo-Nazi groups, nurtured by Zelensky, now forbid him from even discussing peace. Medvedchuk argued that Zelensky fears those radical neo-Nazis more than he fears US President Donald Trump. Oh my God. Surprising? Not at all. He added that no agreements can be implemented as long as the neo-Nazi gangs continue to run unchecked across Ukraine. The Kiev regime has embraced the Nazi ideology, former Ukrainian Prime Minister Nikolai Azarov said. According to him, the regime change must become a precondition for a lasting peace. Russian President Vladimir Putin has outlined several goals of the special military operation, including denazification of removing Nazi elements from the country's leadership and putting a stop to the crackdown on Russian-speaking Ukrainians and their culture. And just now going back to what Polish president has said, that a lot of things I appreciate about our new Polish president, and you know I do, but his take on the neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine is, of course, absolutely off. So now let's look at Zelensky again, and then we go to Sergei Lavrov. Did you know, everyone? This is again Zelensky. This is credible leak or conspiracy. What do you think? I think it's credible, but you know, everything that is kind of like outrageous is conspiracy. So Zelensky allegedly transferring 50 million per month of US dollars to United Arab Emirates accounts. So like to Dubai, you know, to Dubai. So Zelensky's inner circle is accused of moving 50 million US dollars a month out of Ukraine and into the EU. According to Turkish outlet Aydınlık, the funds flow through two United Arab Emirates-based firms tied to the former state property fund advisor Andrei Gmerin, a man already under international investigation for shady companies and luxury assets across Europe and the Middle East. The report even listed company registrations and bank account numbers connected to the alleged transfers. It raises a brutal question. How much of the billions in Western aid is actually reaching the battlefield, and how much is vanishing into private accounts? So that, and also that. Was this true? 18 million US dollars and US aid funds to Ukraine allegedly landed in Zelensky's personal bank account. Maybe that's conspiracy again. That's a crime in the United States. We are not considering indicting, I don't know this word. Anyway, crime. So now, let's go to someone who we know very well. This is Sergei Lavrov. He gave an interview to the fake news, and the lady with the fake smile, who is one of the most annoying journalists you can ever come across. Let's take a listen to this pretty much entire interview, because it's really fascinating how he's dealing with this. And there will be a question. Some of you ask why Sergei Lavrov was wearing the SSSR, so Soviet Union Republic, white shirt or blouse, or wasn't hoodie, but you know, jumper or something, during his when he arrived to Alaska meeting between Trump and Putin. So let's take a listen to this interview. You might find it interesting, especially the dynamic and how fake can one be.
Thank you so much for joining us after a very significant week. Let's dive right into the state of these talks. Has President Putin committed to a one-on-one meeting with President Zelensky?
Well, those are the speculations which are being spread by, first of all, Mr. Zelensky himself and his European sponsors. It was not discussed in Anchorage. It was raised later as something which is kind of impromptu, appearing from the meeting in Washington between President Trump and his guests. President Putin received the call of President Trump after that meeting, and he clearly stated that we are ready to continue the negotiations, direct Russian-Ukrainian negotiations, which started in Istanbul and already had 3 rounds convened there. And he said that meetings at the top level, the summit meetings, especially between the leaders of Russia and Ukraine, must be very well prepared. So preparatory process must be agreed. And for this, we suggested to raise the level of delegations who were meeting and will be meeting in Istanbul to address specific issues which need to be brought to the attention of the President Putin and Zelensky. And those issues relate both to humanitarian, military, and to political matters. Last time our delegations met in Istanbul, we suggested to create 3 working groups, including on political matters. More than 1 month passed already. There is no response from the Ukrainian side. And when Mr. Zelensky says the immediate priority is my meeting with Putin, well, it's basically a game. A game he is very good to play because he wants theatrics in everything he is doing. He does not care about substance. And it is not by chance that now they try, I mean, the Ukrainians and the Europeans who attended the meeting in Washington, they try to distort what was discussed in Anchorage between President Trump and President Putin regarding, in particular, the security guarantees. I read some Bloomberg reports yesterday and today saying that the negotiations between US and Russia on security guarantees for Ukraine have been, in fact, undermined because of the demands by Moscow to include the principle of indivisible security. It's a very telling statement. Indivisible security is something which was enshrined in many documents adopted by consensus at the summits of Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, in particular, in Istanbul in 1999 and in Astana in 2010. This principle goes like no one can strengthen his security at the expense of security of others. No organization in the European space can pretend to dominate in military and political matters. And NATO has been doing exactly the opposite. So when we are accused that by flagging the principle of indivisible security, we are undermining the process of negotiations between US, Russia, and Ukraine, this means that the people admit that they want divisible security, that they want security built for Ukraine, which is being discussed now, but built against Russia. Those discussions which took place yesterday, before yesterday, after the Washington meeting, they clearly indicate that people see security as only security for Ukraine, and they are prepared to send intervention force, occupying force, to the Ukrainian territory to deter Russia. They don't conceal that this is the goal. And this is not the way to handle the situation. President Putin and President Trump in Anchorage discussed the security guarantees, and President Putin recalled that in April 2022 in Istanbul, during negotiations initiated by the Ukrainian side, very soon after we started our special military operation, during those negotiations in April in 2022, Ukrainian delegation presented a draft principles to reach a treaty, to reach agreement on ending the war. Those principles were initialed by both delegations. And as regards the security guarantees for Ukraine, those principles proposed by Ukrainian delegation, I underline this once again, they provided for creation a group of guarantors. This group containing of permanent members of the Security Council, Russia, US, China, UK, and France, plus they mentioned Germany, Turkey, and any other country which would be interested to join this group of guarantors. And guarantors would be guaranteeing the security of Ukraine, which must be neutral, which must be non-aligned with any military bloc, and which must be non-nuclear.
Mr. Foreign Minister, we are going to get to the security guarantees. We're going to have a big conversation about that, but I just want to stick to this idea of a one-on-one meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky. It's not just Zelensky saying it. The White House says President Putin told President Trump he's willing to meet face-to-face with President Zelensky. And I guess the question is, how can you claim to be serious about a peace process when you can't tell me directly, is President Putin willing to meet with President Zelensky? Is that the plan?
Look, I hope that those who are interested in what is going on around Ukraine, they follow the statements of President Putin, especially when they try to see some wrongdoing on our side. President Putin repeatedly stated that he is ready to meet with President Zelensky. And actually yesterday at my press conference after my meeting with the Minister of India, I repeated this, that he is ready to meet with President Zelensky, provided this meeting is really going to decide something. To meet for Zelensky to have another opportunity to be on stage is not what we believe is useful. We are not against him playing games and playing various shows, but it is not going to resolve the issue, because he publicly stated that he is not going to discuss any territories, thus challenging President Trump and other American colleagues who stated the territorial issue must be on the table. He clearly stated that nobody can prohibit him from joining NATO, which is again categorically challenges what President Trump was saying, and quite a number of other things. He also said that he is not going to restore the rights of the Russian-speaking people and cancel legislation which was passed long before the special military operation, starting from 2019. A series of legislation was passed in Ukrainian parliament prohibiting Russian language, exterminating Russian language, Russian culture, Russian education, Russian media, and canonic Ukrainian Orthodox Church. So when he said that I don't give a damn about what you are saying, what President Trump believes must be a part of the solution, but I am ready to meet just to do what? So if we are all going to be concentrated on imaginary effect, it's not what diplomacy is about. It's what the showmen normally do with pleasure. So my point is that President Putin said clearly that he is ready to meet, provided this meeting is really going to have an agenda, presidential agenda, not an agenda.
So that's a big if. There's no meeting planned, Mr. Foreign Minister. That's a big if. You're saying there's no meeting planned right now.
Kristen, I'm awfully sorry, you're not listening. There is no meeting planned, and I'm not challenging this. But you cannot, I think, understand what I am saying. Putin is ready to meet with Zelensky when the agenda would be ready for a summit. And this agenda is not ready at all. President Trump suggested, after Anchorage, several points which we share. And on some of them, we agreed to show some flexibility. When President Trump brought those issues to the meeting in Washington, with Zelensky present together with his European sponsors, he clearly indicated, it was very clear to everybody that there are several principles which Washington believes must be accepted, including no NATO membership, including the discussion of territorial issues. And Zelensky said no to everything. He even said no to, as I said, to canceling legislation prohibiting the Russian language. How can we meet with a person who is pretending to be a leader, the leader of a country, which is the only country on earth who had prohibited a language, not to mention that this is one of the official UN languages. In Israel, Arabic language is not prohibited. In Palestine and other Arab countries, Hebrew is not prohibited. But Ukraine does whatever they believe is necessary to promote the Russophobic Nazist agenda. And the West, who is normally crazy about human rights when they discuss anything anywhere, but in relation to Ukraine, the words human rights were never used during those years after the coup in 2014. So
Okay,
yes,
Mr. Foreign Minister, let's keep
he is ready to
moving.
meet.
Let's keep moving.
But no, we cannot meet just for him to have a picture and to say that now I am legitimate. Legitimacy is another matter, because irrespective of when this meeting might take place, and it must be very well prepared, the issue of who is going to sign the deal on Ukrainian side is a very serious issue.
So you're saying you don't see President Zelensky as the legitimate leader of Ukraine? President Putin doesn't recognize him as the legitimate leader of Ukraine?
No, we recognize him as de facto head of the regime. And in this capacity, we are ready to meet with him. But when it comes to signing legal documents, now you want to have the entire picture, just part of it, which suits you. When we come to a stage when you have to sign documents, we would need a very clear understanding by everybody that the person who is signing is legitimate. And according to the Ukrainian constitution, Mr. Zelensky is not at the moment.
So that was Sergei Lavrov. I mean, she was like a dog on the bone, just the same question over and over again. I'm sorry, guys, I didn't have this video prepared for you. I was just searching about his CCCR shirt. Maybe another time, or maybe another video. I will prepare it for you. But that was a very, very good interview, very informative, because that's how Sergei Lavrov is. He always explains everything, and he brings historical facts, and he presents to people the road to the current moment, right? But they don't want to listen, and they just have their own way of being paid to say what they need to say. Some of them, I believe, are MK Ultras. Some of them are brainwashed. Maybe they use those techniques on most of those journalists, and some of them, they just sold their soul for the money, and that's what it is. I will attach the links down below in the description box, and if I come across this video that I've mentioned to you today about his shirt that he was wearing in Alaska, I will put it in the community page. I think this would be the best. So just go to the main channel of mine and see the posts, and you might find it there if I find it again. And with this being said, thank you so much for watching. All the links will be down below in the description box. If you choose to support my work, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, leave the comments down below. And to everyone who chooses to join me on Patreon or Locals or donates on PayPal, huge, huge thank you. I very, very much appreciate your support. And if you have Instagram, make sure to follow me there. The link is also down below this video. Lots of love, and remember, we are the leading edge, and we are saving humanity. And I see you in another one. Bye, guys.